What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you my next roughly 8 reviews as we look to move into 2025. With that said, it's been a couple days, so I hope you had a great Christmas or any other holiday you happen to celebrate. And while it is certainly still holiday break in large part, as always, I tend to just keep moving right along in terms of these reviews, and I've got a new slate of them for you. As a matter of fact, this is a video I tend to make every couple of months to kind of just let people know roughly what I have planned, and while things do change and have to move around a little bit, this is pretty much what you'll be able to expect. With that in mind, though, while January and February are pretty set in stone, I would say, in terms of new releases, that is, there are a whole host of games that should be releasing in 2025 that do not currently have a release date, which isn't terribly surprising given how we aren't technically even in 2025 yet, but it does make an early look at the first few months a bit difficult to plan out super efficiently, because there will be a couple of gaps. I'm going to mention some stuff that comes out in March actually, and I'll likely have some old stuff to fill in that space just in case. But I imagine starting with Xbox's upcoming Developer Direct, we'll likely get a clearer picture, though no word on when that's actually going to be just yet, but probably late January if the past couple of years are anything to go by. Which is all a very long-winded way of saying that I'm playing the next couple of months a bit by ear outside of the things that we know for sure are happening. In particular, though, February is looking to be particularly packed. But let's kick this video off with what is going on right now, and that is my in-progress review. If you've been watching a lot, you may know that I'm wrapping up Visions of Mana. I have to do like one more thing. Hopefully you'll see that review in the next day or two. But right after that is done, I will first be taking a look at a couple of games I wanted to squeeze into 2024 but couldn't quite make the time as we kick off January. So some prior releases, as it were. Starting off with Wayfinder. Wayfinder started its life as a sort of MMO. That launch didn't go particularly well, and after a whole bunch of feedback and time in early access, I believe, developer Airship Syndicate, after losing its publisher, still managed to turn this around and make a pretty solid ARPG from what was left of that game. So an interesting situation to be sure, but from what I have played of it, I have actually made a video of it since then, it's pretty solid, and I'm excited to actually dive through the full thing and see if it really holds up and just how good I actually think it is. But by all accounts, they seem to have managed to turn it around. Right after that, I will be reviewing the Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake, which is another game I took a look at briefly, basically enough to know I wanted to play it, but didn't actually manage to go through the full thing. Mostly because I know people really love the Dragon Quest series, and I'm largely unfamiliar with it comparatively to like Final Fantasy. And I also just really love the HD 2D remakes that Square Enix has been putting out, and just any game with that art style generally. I'm a very big fan of it, and you combine those two things together and you've got a game I definitely want to play. That said, this game's biggest problem, to me at least, largely seems to be the price. Charging $60 for a remake of a relatively small game that doesn't even have proper combat animations due to what it was, and I think it's a pretty hard sell at that price, but ultimately I'll find out for myself because I will be reviewing this one not too far from now. Now, the rest of January will likely be consumed by yet more JRPGs, but this time ones I'm actually pretty familiar with for the most part, because following on from that, we'll be taking a look at first Final Fantasy VII Intergrade, hopefully before its sequel, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, hits PC on the 23rd, so I can finally get around to checking both of those out. Now, to give a little background there, if you haven't watched the channel religiously, you may not know that I'm a big fan of Final Fantasy. I have played all of the mainline games, though I haven't really put a lot of them on the channel. Final Fantasy VII, though, in particular, was actually, when I was 7 years old myself, the first big game I ever finished on my own, and I had a lot of memories tied up with it. And for a long time, with the Intergrade remake, I was kind of avoiding it, just because, I had, memories of what that game was to me, and I didn't really want to intrude upon that too much. But after learning that they were kind of deviating from the original in some pretty important ways that basically allow me to see the original as one experience and these remakes as like a familiar but separate thing, which may seem silly, but it was important to me. But long story short, I finally feel comfortable taking a look at those, which has been the case for a little while, truth be told, but with Rebirth finally coming to PC, now is just a convenient time to actually do it. Now with that out of the way though, that does bring us to an extremely busy month, which is February. So February has an intense amount of stuff going on, a lot of releases, all kind of right packed in there. But I'll be focusing on the two that are most important to me, which is Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and Avowed. So starting with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, I played and reviewed the first one not all that long ago, back at the beginning of 2023, and I really enjoyed it. I had a great time. If I'm not mistaken, that video is actually still like one of my top 10 most viewed videos. So unsurprisingly, a sequel that promises to sort of smooth the edges of the delightfully janky game that is Kingdom Come Deliverance is definitely of note to me. I'm actually really hoping they manage to nail that. A lot of what they've shown off looks fun, early versions of guns, some details about the open world and how individual characters might react or get replaced and how the justice system works, etc. So I've got a lot of hopes for that one. It is coming out on February 4th, but if nothing else, I'm hoping it gives us a slightly more satisfying conclusion this time, as it certainly seems to be aiming for at the very least. Now, moving on from there, we then have Avowed on February 18th, the other priority for me that month. This is from Obsidian, and it is set in the Pillars of Eternity world of Aora. Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2 are big games on the channel, CRPGs of course, so that's kind of where my head usually is. I loved that series, made a whole bunch of lore videos about it. The second game, Deadfire, has one of the most difficult challenges in CRPGs period, which I'm currently trying to work out as well. Hoping to get that done before Avowed drops, but we'll see what happens. It is extremely difficult. So while the genre shift from CRPG to, of course, a more action-oriented first and third-person RPG is a bit jarring, I want to know more about that world and I want to see what they do with it. And thus, while I personally obviously would have preferred Pillars 3, there is zero chance I am missing Avowed. Now, there's a lot of other stuff going on in February. I'm kind of playing it by ear. I know Assassin's Creed Shadows is one people have asked me about. I don't know if I'm going to check that one out yet. I haven't played an Assassin's Creed game since 2, actually, so it's been a while. So on that front, I'm going to try to see if I can't learn a little more about it before I make a decision. You may or may not get a review out of me on that one. Then there's also Monster Hunter Wilds coming in at the end of the month, February 28th. This is another one people ask me about all the time, Monster Hunter in general, and generally I'm not a huge fan of the Monster Hunter series. I've never really enjoyed them, to be honest, and so jumping into a series I already know I don't love that much, and to be honest with you, have not kept up with much, isn't a great place to start reviewing something from. So I may make a video about it if I check it out, but no promises, frankly. So that brings us to March. I wanted to include two titles here just because they're on my radar, which are Atomfall, a survival action game from Rebellion, inspired by real-life events, in particular the Windscale nuclear disaster in northern England. But this one's on my radar because I have enjoyed a lot of what they have previewed and shown off for this. Rebellion has done a lot of cool stuff with their Sniper Elite series, and I'm definitely interested in seeing what they can do here. So that one's out on March 27th, so a bit of a gap there. So until we get to the end of March is likely where I'll fit more older releases in, but also releasing that very same day, we have the first Berserker Khazan. I play a lot of Souls-like action games these days, so this is right up my alley. I enjoy the art style on this one. Everything they've shown off looks especially brutal, which means I'll get to take a little break from the RPGs by absolutely ripping everything limb from limb. Now, right here towards the end of the video, just to give you an idea of some of the older games I want to take a look at. Currently, I'm thinking Skyrim, which is technically my most played single player game of all time. I just haven't covered it on the channel yet, and I've never played the Horizon Zero games. So I plan on reviewing those sometime relatively early in the year, but I'm trying to keep the schedule a bit open, as I mentioned in the intro. But for right now, I think that paints a relatively clear picture of what things look like over the next 2 to 3 months, give or take, which is about as much as we can do in terms of a preview at the moment, until we start getting a clear picture of when things will be released, etc. But for right now, I think that's pretty much going to do it. I certainly hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, stick around a little bit, hopefully to see some of these reviews, I would imagine. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom, and have an amazing day.